We're checking in with the Athletics' Lindsay Jones to discuss the Broncos' search for a new general manager. Lindsay, as you know, the Broncos certainly are not the only team in the league on the search. In your opinion, what makes this position with the Broncos so appealing?
Yeah, I think this is a place that you can win. And that's been pretty clear. It's been a rough couple of years, but I think foundationally, this is still a very well respected organization. It's obviously a great place to live. I think we all understand that. That's a really big selling point that people want to come here. They want to stay here. I think there's a lot of nice roster pieces in place, those young guys, especially on offense that we talked about. And while they don't have maybe the quarterback in place that some of these other general manager jobs do, a place like Houston, for example, where you have Deshaun Watson, you do at least have a pretty good player there, and you're going to have some good options. It's not like you would be taking this job with a barren cupboard. There's a lot of really nice offensive pieces and some nice young defensive pieces as well, but from the last couple of drafts. So I think that's what makes this job attractive. I think Vic Fangio is good to work with. I think that relationship between a head coach and general manager is so important. And they're not going to be on equal footing in terms of they're not hired at the same time. We know that this new general manager is going to have final say over the roster, but it's so important that that is a partnership. And I think Vic Fangio is going to be a good guy to work with, and would be a selling point to the candidates who are going to be interested in this job.
Lindsay, there's been numerous candidates talked about for this position: Champ Kelly, George Payton, Dave Ziegler, Terry Fontenot, and Brian Snark. Given the fact that Champ Kelly has spent time here in Denver, what qualities do you like about him?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Champ Kelly, and he deserves all of these general manager interviews that he is going to get. He has been working really hard for this for a really long time, and he's just very well respected around the NFL. So, I think evaluation is obviously at the heart of a general manager job. How you look at players, how you project players coming from college into the NFL, and that's more difficult now than it probably has ever been, because these guys are asked to play right away. There's no learning curve anymore in the NFL. And I think it's maybe a little bit helpful that NFL offenses and defenses too are adapting back to college a little bit more than they used to. But you have to be able to evaluate players. But a general manager job in the NFL is so much more than a scouting job. And it's not necessarily the case that the best scouts would automatically be the best general managers. The general manager needs to also kind of it's somewhat of a CEO, because you're running that entire football operations department. And there's a lot of administrative stuff that goes into it. So it's, how are you as a leader? How do you build a staff? What is your scouting philosophy? What is your evaluation philosophy? What sort of relationships do you have with people around the league in terms of, because you're going to be doing so much dealing. You're going to be dealing with agents. What are you like as a negotiator? How do you manage the salary cap? So, these are all a lot of really big questions to answer. And, Champ Kelly, I think he's a great evaluator. I think he's shown that he has roots both in college scouting, but he's also spent a significant amount of time as a pro personnel scout. So he knows personnel around the NFL really, really, really well. And he also has a lot of connections in Denver. Obviously, he worked here previously under John Elway, and he worked with Vic Fangio in Chicago. So those sort of connections. But the thing is, there's a lot of guys with connections to Denver around the league.
Well, obviously, whoever gets the job, they're going to have a really long to-do list. So what do you think the number one priority or the very top thing on that list should be?
Well, I think that, they're going to have some deadlines coming up pretty quickly that they're going to have to hit in terms of Justin Simmons. Do you franchise tag him again? Can you get a long-term deal with him done before he hits free agency? Von Miller's contract situation, there's going to be some deadlines there, figuring out if he's going to be a Bronco in 2021. And if he is it going to be under a different contract, or do you kind of let him play it out right here? So those are like the really pressing ones. I think you're going to have to make a decision on Kareem Jackson and his contract. So just the way that the league calendar is set up, there's going to be some pretty immediate things that are going to happen. So those are going to be the first things. Those are going to be the first order of business, is figuring out what this roster looks like right now. And then what are their priorities going to be as they need to work on re-signing their own guys, figuring out how they're going to allocate what's going to be a lot less money, unfortunately, in 2021.
You kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but what do you think a new GM will mean for Drew Lock?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question. I mean, whoever this is gonna come in with his own evaluation. Whoever this new general manager is, probably evaluated Drew Lock coming out of the
Right.
draft, and will have his own scouting report and, his own ideas. And, I'm sure part of this interview process is going to be watching all of the Broncos games, getting into what Drew Lock's tape is. So, that's the wild card, right? Is that we just don't really know. And sometimes a new coach or a new general manager will come in and they want to bring in their own guy. There might be a guy that they loved who's on the free agent market, or who is from a previous spot that they worked. So, I wouldn't feel as super secure if I'm anybody on this roster, or a guy like Drew Lock. But, I think that Elway's evaluation will still carry a lot of weight. I think that Fangio's evaluation will still carry a lot of weight. So if those guys are still backing Drew Lock, it will probably be good for him, but you just never know. And that's what happens when you bring in a completely new set of eyes and a different perspective.
Well, Lindsay, we can't thank you enough for joining us today and providing your insight.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me, and enjoy what's going to be a pretty crazy off season, I think.